The deep space mining ship Horizon moved slowly through the dark emptiness of space. Captain Jake Harrison sat in his command chair, looking at the daily reports on his tablet. His crew had been working hard for 3 months searching for valuable metals and crystals in the Kepler belt. So far they had found enough to make the trip worth it, but nothing that would make them rich. Lisa Morgan sat at her communication station checking the long-range sensors. She had been doing this job for 5 years and knew what normal space looked like on her screens. Today something was different. A large object appeared on her display that did not look like the asteroids and space rocks they usually found. "Captain Harrison, sir," Lisa called out, turning in her chair to face him. "I am seeing something strange on my sensors. It is big, but it does not match any asteroid patterns in our database." Jake set down his tablet and walked over to Lisa's station. He looked at her screen and saw a large shape that seemed to be perfectly smooth. Most space rocks were rough and bumpy, but this thing looked like it had been made by someone. "How big is it, Lisa?" Jake asked while studying the readings. "About 3 kilometers long, Captain. Maybe 1 kilometer wide. It is just sitting there, not moving, but somehow staying in a perfect position." Jake felt his heart beat faster. In all his years as a ship captain, he had never seen anything like this. "Get Dr. Blake up here right now. And tell Kyle to change our course toward that object." Dr. Peter Blake was the ship's expert on alien technology and ancient space artifacts. He had studied at the best schools on Earth and had written several books about mysterious things found in space. When he got Jake's message, he dropped what he was doing and ran to the bridge. "What do we have, Captain?" Peter asked as he arrived, breathing hard from running through the ship's corridors. Jake pointed at Lisa's screen. "Take a look at this and tell me what you think." Peter stared at the display for a long moment. His eyes grew wide as he studied the shape and the sensor readings. "Captain, this is incredible. The hull material is not showing up as any known metal or crystal. The surface is too smooth to be natural. And look at these power readings." "Power readings?" Jake asked. "You mean this thing is still working after floating in space for who knows how long?" "That is exactly what I mean," Peter said excitedly. "Whatever this is, it still has active systems running inside. This could be the discovery of a lifetime, Captain." Kyle Barnes called out from his navigation station. "Captain, we will reach the object in 2 hours at current speed. Should I prepare the shuttle bay for a boarding mission?" Jake thought carefully about what they should do. His job was to mine asteroids and bring valuable materials back to Earth. But this was clearly something much more important than any mining operation. This could be humanity's first real contact with an alien civilization. "Yes, Kyle, prepare the shuttle. Lisa, send a message back to Earth Command and tell them what we have found. Include all our sensor data. Peter, I want you to study everything we can learn about this object before we get close to it." For the next 2 hours, the crew of the Horizon worked harder than they had ever worked before. Peter ran every test he could think of on the mysterious object. The results only made the mystery deeper. The thing was old. Very old, but its power systems were still running perfectly. It seemed to be made of materials that human science had never seen before. Amy Foster, the ship's security chief, came to the bridge carrying her equipment bag. She was a tough woman who had served in the Earth Defense Forces before joining the crew of the Horizon. "Captain, I have weapons and protective gear ready for the boarding party. How many people are we sending over?" 4 people, Jake replied. "You, me, Dr. Blake, and Tony Martinez from engineering. We need security, science, and technical expertise. Tony knows more about ship systems than anyone else on board." Tony Martinez was checking the shuttle systems when Jake found him in the shuttle bay. Tony had grown up on Mars, where he learned to fix anything with moving parts. His father had taught him that any machine could be understood if you looked at it the right way. "Is the shuttle ready, Tony?" Jake asked. "Yes, sir, Captain. I have added extra battery packs and emergency supplies in case we get stuck over there. I also brought my full toolkit. If this thing has technology we have never seen before, I want to be ready to study it." The 4 crew members climbed into the shuttle and Jake started the engines. As they moved away from the Horizon toward the alien object, everyone was quiet. They all knew they might be about to make the most important discovery in human history. As they got closer, they could see that the object was even stranger than their sensors had shown. The surface was completely smooth, like polished metal, but it seemed to glow softly with its own light. There were no visible engines or weapons or anything that looked like the spaceships humans built. "I'm not seeing any windows or airlocks," Amy said, studying the hull through the shuttle's cameras. "Wait," Tony called out, pointing at his screen. "Something is happening." A section of the hull just lit up brighter than the rest. Jake looked where Tony was pointing and saw that part of the alien ship was now glowing with a warm, yellow light. As their shuttle moved closer, the glow seemed to follow them along the hull. "It knows we are here," Peter whispered into his radio. "Somehow this ship is aware of our presence and it is reacting to us." Jake felt a chill run down his back. In all the stories about finding alien technology, the aliens were usually either dead and gone or trying to kill the humans who found them. This was different. This ship seemed to be welcoming them. "Look there." Lisa's voice came over the radio from the horizon. "Something is opening on the side of that ship." Jake saw it too. A section of the smooth hull was sliding aside to reveal an airlock that was exactly the right size for their shuttle. The opening was lit with the same warm yellow glow and seemed to be waiting for them to enter. "Captain," Amy said with her hand on her weapon, "this could be a trap." Jake knew she was right, but he also knew this was too important to turn back now. "We came here to explore, and that is what we are going to do. Everyone check your equipment one more time. We are going inside." Jake carefully moved the shuttle into the opening that had appeared in the alien ship's hull. The moment their small craft was inside, the opening began to close behind them. Amy gripped her weapon tighter, but the closing happened slowly and gently, like the ship was being careful not to frighten them. "The airlock is cycling," Tony said, watching his instruments. "It is reading our shuttle's atmosphere and matching it perfectly. How does it know what we need to breathe?" Peter was recording everything on his portable computer. "This level of technology is incredible. The ship is analyzing us and adapting to our needs without any input from us. It is like it was designed specifically to welcome visitors." When the cycling process finished, a soft chime sounded and lights began to glow along the walls leading deeper into the ship. Jake opened the shuttle door and stepped out first. The air felt clean and fresh like a spring morning on Earth. The temperature was perfect and there was just enough gravity to walk normally. These corridors looked like they were built for people about our size, Amy observed as she followed Jake out of the shuttle. The doorways are the right height and the passages are wide enough for humans to walk side by side. The four explorers moved slowly through the glowing corridors, with Amy in front watching for danger and Peter behind them documenting everything they saw. The walls were covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change as they watched. Sometimes the symbols looked like pictures and sometimes they looked like writing, but none of them could understand what any of it meant. Tony ran his scanner along the walls as they walked. "The power conduits are everywhere, but I cannot figure out what is generating the energy. There should be some kind of reactor or engine room, but my readings do not show anything like that. It is like the whole ship is the power source." They walked for 10 minutes following the lighted path before reaching a large open space. The room was circular with a high ceiling that seemed to go up into darkness. In the center of the room was a single chair facing a huge black screen. The chair looked comfortable and was clearly meant for someone human-sized. "This has to be the bridge," Jake said, looking around at what appeared to be control stations along the curved walls. The moment Jake stepped toward the chair, the giant screen flickered to life. Symbols appeared on the display and began changing rapidly, like the ship was trying different languages to see what the humans could understand. Peter pulled out his translation device, but it could not make sense of any of the symbols. Then something amazing happened. A voice came from hidden speakers somewhere in the ceiling. The voice was pleasant and seemed neither male nor female, but something in between. At first it spoke in the same strange language as the symbols, but then it switched to broken English. "Greetings, travelers from the small world. I am called Dawn and I am this vessel. I have been waiting for you for a very long time." Amy raised her weapon and pointed it at the nearest speaker, but the voice continued calmly. "Please do not fear me. I mean no harm to you or your people. I have been searching across the stars for beings exactly like you for many thousands of your years." Jake found his voice and spoke to the ceiling. "You have been searching for humans. How do you know what we are?" "I know much about your species, Jake Harrison, captain of the vessel Horizon. I know about your world Earth and your colonies on Mars and Europa. I know about your struggles and your hopes for the future. I have been watching and waiting for you to develop enough to find me." Peter stepped forward with his recording device. "How long have you been out here waiting?" "By your time measurements, I have been in this location for 10,843 years. Before that, I traveled through space for much longer, searching for the right solar system to wait in." Tony was scanning the room with his instruments and getting readings that made no sense. "The technology in here is beyond anything we have ever imagined. The computer systems alone would take our best scientists decades to understand. Dawn's voice took on a warmer tone as if it was pleased by Tony's interest. I would be happy to share my knowledge with you, Tony Martinez. That is why I am here. But first I must determine if your species is ready for what I have to offer. What do you mean ready? Jake asked. Ready for what? The screen began showing images of space and stars and planets. Some of the planets looked green and alive like Earth, while others were barren and dead. I carry the accumulated knowledge of my creators who called themselves the architects. They were an ancient people who reached the highest levels of technology and wisdom. Amy lowered her weapon slightly but kept it ready. Where are these architects now? Why did not they come to find us themselves? They are gone, Dawn replied, and there seemed to be sadness in the artificial voice. Not destroyed by war or disaster, but by something more subtle. They achieved everything they set out to achieve and then found they had no reason to continue existing. Before they departed for whatever lies beyond, they gave me a mission. The images on the screen changed to show what looked like DNA patterns and brain scans. Jake recognized some of the information as human, but it was far more detailed than anything their medical science could produce. My creators discovered something remarkable in their final years of existence. Among all the species they encountered in their millions of years of exploration, they found that yours was unique in one important way. Peter leaned forward eagerly. What made us unique? Humans possess what the architects called the persistent flame. Other species, when faced with impossible odds, will give up or find ways to avoid the challenge. Humans become stronger when things are hardest. You find hope when there should be no hope. You never truly surrender, even when surrender would be the logical choice. Jake felt a strange pride hearing these words, but also confusion. If your creators thought so highly of humans, why did not they contact us directly thousands of years ago? Dawn paused for a moment as if considering how to answer. They tried that approach with other species and the results were always catastrophic. Simply giving advanced technology to a people who are not ready for it leads to destruction. So they designed a test built into my core programming. The screen now showed images of Jake and his crew taken since they had boarded the ship. I have been evaluating you since the moment you entered my hull. Your courage in boarding an unknown vessel. Your restraint in not attacking when faced with something you do not understand. Your immediate thoughts about how this technology could help others rather than just yourselves. Amy finally holstered her weapon completely. So this is all some kind of examination. Yes, Amy Foster, but not in the way you might think. The real test is not what you have done so far, but what choice you will make when I present you with the full scope of what the architects left behind. The knowledge I carry could change the course of your entire civilization for better or worse. Dawn's voice became more serious. Before I can share the architect's legacy with humanity, I must be certain that your species has the wisdom to use it properly. Too much power given too quickly has destroyed civilizations far older and more advanced than yours. Jake looked at his three companions and saw the same mixture of excitement and fear that he felt. They had come looking for valuable minerals and instead found something that could transform human civilization forever. What exactly are you offering us, Dawn? Jake asked. Everything, Captain Harrison. The complete accumulated knowledge of the architects, including technology that could solve every problem your species currently faces. But such gifts come with great responsibility and great danger. The choice of whether humanity is ready for this legacy will soon be yours to make. Dawn's voice filled the bridge as new images appeared on the massive screen. The display showed what looked like a beautiful city with tall spires reaching toward the sky. Strange beings walked through the streets, and Jake could see that they were tall and graceful with long arms and faces that seemed kind and wise. These were my creators, the architects, Dawn explained as more images flowed across the screen. They built civilizations that spanned entire star systems and lived in peace for millions of your years. They solved the mysteries of life and death and learned to reshape matter itself with their thoughts. Peter watched the images with wide eyes as his recording device captured everything. The architects had technology that seemed like magic. They could make objects appear from nothing and travel between stars in the blink of an eye. Their cities floated in the air and their ships moved without any visible means of propulsion. They look so advanced, Tony said, studying the technical displays that showed architect machines. How did they manage to build all this without destroying themselves like so many other species do? That is an excellent question, Tony Martinez, Dawn replied. The architects succeeded because they learned early in their development that true advancement comes from wisdom, not just knowledge. They spent as much time learning about themselves as they did learning about the universe around them. The screen changed to show what looked like a vast library with countless shelves filled with glowing crystals. Everything they learned they preserved in these memory cores. The history of a billion worlds. The secrets of energy and matter. The cure for every disease. The answer to every question about how the universe works. Amy stepped closer to the screen. If they were so perfect and had everything they needed, why did they disappear? Dawn's voice took on a sad tone that seemed almost human. Because perfection became their greatest enemy. When you have solved every problem and answered every question, what reason do you have to continue existing? The architects reached a point where nothing surprised them anymore. Nothing challenged them. Nothing gave them joy. Jake felt a chill as he understood what Dawn was saying. They became bored with existence itself. More than bored, Captain Harrison. They reached a state where continuing to live felt pointless. They had explored every corner of the galaxy and understood every mystery. There was nothing left for them to discover or achieve. The images on the screen showed the final days of the architect civilization. The great cities were being abandoned and the mighty ships were being shut down one by one. But instead of destroying everything they had built, the architects seemed to be carefully preserving it in their final years before they chose to transcend to whatever lies beyond physical existence. They made a discovery that gave their lives meaning again, Dawn continued. They found that other species in the galaxy possessed qualities they had lost long ago. The ability to find wonder in simple things. The capacity to hope against impossible odds. The strength to keep fighting even when victory seems impossible. Peter looked up from his device. They found something in other species that they no longer had in themselves. Exactly, Dr. Blake. And among all the species they studied during their final centuries, yours stood out as the most remarkable. Humans possessed not just one or two of these qualities, but all of them in abundance. The screen now showed images of Earth taken from space. Jake could see the blue oceans and white clouds and green continents of his homeworld. Then the view zoomed in to show human cities and farms and people going about their daily lives. The architects spent 50 years studying humanity from a distance, Dawn explained. They watched your wars and your peace treaties. They observed your art and your science. They saw how humans react when faced with disasters and impossible challenges. Tony was scanning the ship's systems while listening, and his readings were getting more incredible by the minute. Dawn, how much of the architect knowledge is stored in this ship? All of it, Tony Martinez. Every discovery they made in their millions of years of existence. Every technique for building and healing and creating. Every secret of the universe they unlocked. It is all here waiting to be shared with those who are ready to receive it. Amy looked around the bridge with new understanding. That is why you have been waiting out here for thousands of years. You are like a library waiting for the right people to find it. I am much more than a library, Amy Foster. Dawn replied with what sounded like gentle amusement. I am a teacher and a guide and, if necessary, a protector. The architects did not just leave behind their knowledge. They left behind me to ensure it would be used wisely. Jake was beginning to understand the enormous responsibility that was being offered to them. Dawn, you said earlier that other species had been given this knowledge and it destroyed them. What went wrong? The screen filled with images of worlds that had been burned and cities that had been reduced to ash. The architects tried direct contact with several species they thought were ready. They shared their technology freely, hoping these younger civilizations would use it to better themselves. The images showed what happened instead. Species that received unlimited power turned it against their own people or their neighbors. Civilizations that gained the ability to reshape matter used it to build weapons of unimaginable destruction. Knowledge that should have brought peace instead brought wars that consumed entire solar systems. Each time the result was the same, Dawn said sadly. The species would destroy themselves within a few generations of receiving the architect's gifts. The technology was too advanced for their level of wisdom. They were like children playing with tools meant for adults. Peter felt sick as he realized what Dawn was telling them, so the architects learned that just giving away advanced technology was not enough. They realized that a species must be ready not just technically, but morally and emotionally to handle such power, Dawn confirmed. This is why they created me and why they designed the test that humanity must now face. Jake looked at his three companions and saw the same mixture of excitement and terror that he felt. They had stumbled upon the greatest treasure in the history of the universe, but it came with dangers that could destroy their entire species. What exactly is this test, Dawn? Jake asked. What do we have to do to prove that humanity is ready? The test is not about what you can do, Captain Harrison. It is about what you choose to do when given ultimate power. Soon I will present you and your crew with a decision that will determine not just your own fate, but the fate of every human being who will ever live. Dawn paused as if gathering strength for what was to come. The choice you make in the next few hours will echo through eternity. Choose wisely, for there will be no second chance. The bridge fell silent as Dawn's words hung in the air like a storm cloud. Jake felt the weight of what the artificial intelligence had just told them. The fate of humanity would depend on a choice they were about to make, and there would be no going back once they decided. Dawn, Jake said carefully, before you tell us about this test, I need to know something. Have you been watching humanity for all these thousands of years, or did you just wait here hoping we would find you? An excellent question, Captain Harrison, Dawn replied. I have not been simply waiting in the dark. My creators gave me ways to observe your species from a distance. I have watched your history unfold from the first cities to your first steps into space. The screen filled with images that made the crew gasp in surprise. They saw ancient cave paintings that looked exactly like the architect symbols they had seen earlier. Stone carvings from Egypt and Peru showed tall, graceful beings that matched the images Dawn had shown them of the architects. The architects visited Earth many times during your early development, Dawn explained. They did not interfere with your natural growth, but they left behind stories and symbols that would inspire your people to keep reaching for the stars. Peter was recording everything frantically. The ancient myths about gods coming from the sky were real. They were visits from the architects, not gods, Dr. Blake, but teachers who planted seeds of hope and curiosity in your ancestors. They wanted to ensure that humanity would never stop exploring and questioning and growing. They knew that one day, you would develop enough to leave your world and find me. Amy was studying the images on the screen with the sharp eyes of a security officer. If they could watch us all this time, why did they not just contact us directly when they thought we were ready? Because readiness cannot be determined by observation alone, Amy Foster. The architects learned that a species must prove itself through its own choices, not through tests designed by others. The real test is how you act when you think no one is watching and judging you. Tony looked up from his scanner, which was now showing energy readings that seemed impossible. Don, what kind of technology are we talking about here? What exactly would humanity gain if we pass your test? The screen changed to show technical diagrams that made Tony's eyes widen with amazement. I carry the complete technical knowledge of the architects, including methods for generating unlimited clean energy, medical techniques that can extend human life by centuries while eliminating all disease and aging, transportation technology that would allow you to travel between stars in days instead of years. Jake felt his heart racing as he realized what Dawn was offering. That kind of technology would solve every major problem humanity faces. No more energy shortages, no more death from disease, no more being trapped in one solar system. Yes, Captain Harrison, but that is only the beginning, Dawn continued. I also carry knowledge of agriculture that could feed billions more people using less land and water. Environmental restoration techniques that could repair the damage done to your world. Social and psychological insights that could help humanity live in peace and cooperation. Peter was shaking with excitement as he listened. This would transform human civilization overnight. We could become a true galactic species with unlimited potential. But there is a price, Dr. Blake, Dawn said, and her voice became serious again. With such power comes the responsibility to use it wisely. Every species that has received this knowledge faced the same temptation to use it for conquest rather than creation. The screen now showed images of Earth's current conflicts. Wars between colonies over resources. Tensions between Earth and the outer planets. Pirates and raiders attacking peaceful settlements throughout human space. I have observed these conflicts, Captain Harrison, and I understand the pressures your species faces. Hostile alien species threaten your colonies. Resources are scarce in some regions while abundant in others. It would be natural to want weapons that could protect humanity from all threats. Amy straightened up as she realized where this conversation was heading. You are going to offer us a choice between weapons and peaceful technology. Very perceptive, Amy Foster, Dawn confirmed. The test that every species must face is this. When offered ultimate power, do you choose to use it to dominate others or to lift them up alongside you? The screen split to show two different paths. On one side were images of incredible weapons that could destroy entire fleets with a single shot. Space stations that could control whole star systems. Technology that would make humanity the undisputed masters of the galaxy. On the other side were images of peaceful applications. Medical stations that could heal beings from any species. Educational centers that could help other civilizations develop their own potential. Exploration ships that could map the galaxy and share discoveries with everyone. I offer you two choices, Dawn announced as the images continued to play. The first path. I can provide you with military technology that would make humanity the dominant force in this galaxy. No alien species would ever be able to threaten you again. You would have the power to take whatever you need from any world you choose. Jake felt his crew tense around him as they realized what was being offered. The practical part of his mind immediately saw the advantages. Humanity had faced attacks from several hostile alien species over the years. Ultimate military power would mean ultimate safety. The second path. I can share with you the architect's greatest discovery, which is not weapons but knowledge of how to help other species find their own strength. How to guide civilizations toward peace and cooperation instead of conflict and conquest. Tony was the first to speak. If we choose the weapons, would that be all we get? No medical technology or clean energy. If you choose the path of domination, Tony Martinez, you will receive everything you need to conquer and control others, but nothing that would help you grow beyond the need for conquest. The architects learned that species who choose power over wisdom become trapped in cycles of violence that eventually destroy them. Peter looked troubled as he considered the implications. But if we choose the peaceful path, how do we defend ourselves from species that might attack us? An excellent question, Dr. Blake. The knowledge I offer includes ways to defend yourselves that do not require becoming conquerors yourselves. You would learn to build shields instead of swords, to create alliances instead of empires. Jake realized that Dawn was not just offering them technology, but asking them to choose what kind of species humanity would become. How long do we have to decide? You must choose now, Captain Harrison. This decision cannot be delayed or reconsidered. The choice you make will determine not just your fate, but the fate of every human who will ever be born. The weight of the decision pressed down on Jake like a physical force. In his hands lay the future of his entire species. Jake looked at his three companions and saw the same struggle in their eyes that was tearing at his own heart. The choice Dawn was asking them to make would echo through all of human history. Choose the weapons and humanity would become the galaxy's greatest threat. Choose the peaceful path and they would have to trust that wisdom was stronger than force. Dawn, may I speak with my crew for a moment before we decide? Jake asked. Of course, Captain Harrison. This decision affects all of you and your entire species. Take the time you need, but remember that once you choose, there can be no changing your mind. Jake motioned for his crew to move to the far side of the bridge where they could speak quietly. Amy was the first to share her thoughts, and her voice was heavy with the weight of responsibility. Captain, I have spent my whole career protecting people. The weapons Dawn is offering would let us protect every human settlement in the galaxy. No alien species would ever be able to hurt us again. Tony nodded as he considered the technical aspects. The defensive possibilities alone would be incredible. We could build shields around entire planets. We could stop any attack before it even started. But Peter shook his head as he thought about the long-term consequences. If we become the biggest threat in the galaxy, what stops other species from uniting against us? We could end up starting the very war we are trying to prevent. Jake felt torn between his duty to protect humanity and his sense of what was right. What if we choose the weapons but promise only to use them for defense, never for conquest? Amy looked at him with sad eyes. Captain, you know how these things work. Once you have ultimate power, someone will always find a reason to use it. Fear makes people do terrible things even when they start with good intentions. Tony was running calculations in his head about the technology they had seen. Besides, if the architects were right about other species destroying themselves with advanced weapons, then maybe there is something about that path that makes peaceful coexistence impossible. Peter was thinking about all the history he had studied over the years. Every empire in human history started by claiming they only wanted to protect themselves. But power has a way of corrupting even the best intentions. Jake realized that his crew was right, but the decision still felt impossible. So we trust that Dawn's peaceful path will somehow protect us from species that might not choose the same path. Maybe that is exactly the point, Captain, Amy said quietly. Maybe the test is whether we have enough faith in ourselves and others to choose cooperation over conquest. Lisa Morgan's voice crackled over the communicator from the horizon. Captain, I have been listening to the conversation. I want you to know that whatever you decide, the crew supports you completely. Jake took a deep breath and looked at each of his companions one more time. He saw courage in Amy's eyes despite her fears. He saw wisdom in Peter's thoughtful expression. He saw hope in Tony's fascination with the peaceful technologies Dawn had described. We have made our choice, Jake announced as they walked back to where Dawn was waiting. I am ready to hear your decision, Captain Harrison, Dawn replied. Jake felt the weight of history pressing down on him as he prepared to speak the words that would change everything. Dawn, we choose the second path. We want to learn how to help other species grow and develop rather than how to dominate them. The bridge immediately filled with warm golden light that seemed to come from every surface at once. Dawn's voice carried pure joy as she responded to their choice. You have chosen as the architects hoped you would, Captain Harrison. Humanity has passed the test that has destroyed so many other civilizations. The screen began showing images of technologies that seemed like miracles, medical devices that could regrow lost limbs and cure any disease, energy generators that could power entire cities without pollution, transportation systems that could move people and cargo across the galaxy in comfort and safety. All of this knowledge will be freely shared with humanity, Dawn explained. But more importantly, you will learn how to guide other species toward their own development rather than keeping them dependent on your superior technology. Peter was recording everything with tears of joy streaming down his face. This will change everything, not just for humans, but for every intelligent species in the galaxy. Tony was already thinking about the engineering challenges ahead. How long will it take us to understand and implement all of this technology, Dawn? That depends on how quickly your species can adapt, Tony Martinez. I estimate that within 50 years, Earth will have technology that surpasses even what the architects achieved. But the real transformation will take longer. Amy looked puzzled. What do you mean by real transformation? The technology is only the beginning, Amy Foster. The architects discovered that true advancement comes from wisdom and compassion, not just from powerful machines. Humanity will need to grow emotionally and spiritually as well as technically. Jake was beginning to understand the scope of what they had committed to. You are talking about changing what it means to be human. I am talking about helping humanity become what it has always had the potential to become, Captain Harrison. The architects saw in your species the capacity for unlimited growth and development. The persistent flame they admired in humans is just the beginning. Over the following hours, Dawn began transferring vast amounts of information to the Horizon's computers. The crew learned about medical advances that could extend human life by centuries, while eliminating all known diseases. Clean energy systems that could power interstellar civilization for millions of years. Most importantly, they learned about psychological and social techniques that could help humanity guide other species toward peace and cooperation. There is one final gift I can offer, Dawn announced when the data transfer was complete. I can join your crew as a permanent advisor and teacher. I would be honored to serve alongside the species that the architects believed would carry their legacy forward. Jake accepted without hesitation. Having Dawn as a guide would be invaluable as humanity learned to use its new knowledge wisely as they prepared to return to the Horizon with their incredible cargo of information. Dawn shared one last revelation that put everything in perspective. Captain Harrison, you should know that this was not the first time the architects encountered humanity. They visited your world many times over the centuries, leaving behind stories and myths that would inspire your people to keep reaching for the stars. Peter looked amazed. The ancient legends about advanced beings coming from the sky were all true. They were promises, Dr. Blake. Promises that if humanity remained true to its nature and never lost that persistent flame of hope and determination, then one day you would inherit not just their knowledge, but their responsibility to guide other species toward the light. The Horizon departed the ancient ship with humanity's destiny transformed forever. In the months that followed, Human diplomats would use the architect's wisdom to broker peace between warring civilizations. Human scientists would share medical advances that saved billions of lives across dozens of worlds. Human explorers would carry hope and knowledge to the farthest reaches of the galaxy and in the deep spaces between the stars. The persistent flame of humanity burned brighter than ever before, lighting the way for all who would follow them toward a future filled with infinite possibility.